Well, good afternoon, everyone. Once again, this is Ed DeVeaux. I'm the president of the New Jersey Cannabis Business Association, the state's first and largest trade association, developed to help us create a responsible, sustainable, diverse, and profitable cannabis industry. We are really glad to have you all with us this afternoon, and I am especially pleased to have with us as our guest, Sydney Snow of Eaze. Before we get started with our weekly conversation, I do want to thank our sponsors. I'd like to thank the law firm of Inglesino, Webster, Wyciskala, and Taylor. I'd like to thank Puffin cannabis entrepreneurs and investors. Really appreciate you. I thank all of our members, all of our corporate members, our individual members, our sponsors, and especially our guests. Thank you for joining us. We just think that this is a lovely way to start the weekend, have a nice Friday afternoon conversation and lunch. So, the cannabis industry, there are tons of firms, tons of names out there, company names, people who touch the plant, ancillary businesses, people that are doing really great things in this space. And we are honored to have with us a representative from one of those great companies. And she is dynamic in her own right. And I'm really glad to be able to introduce to you Sydney Snow of Eaze. How are you, Sydney?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Ed.
Oh, no, my pleasure, my pleasure. So where are you today? Are you in New Jersey or somewhere else in the country?
Well, I am based out of Washington, D.C. So I am here on a very rainy day in D.C. talking to you all.
Wow. Well, thank you for taking time out. So to kick off the conversation, when I just mentioned, there are tons of companies out there. There are tons of names of groups, and people are pretty much familiar with Eaze. You guys have done a great job of getting your name out there. But the question is, what does Eaze do? I know that some of us have some conceptual knowledge, or we think we've read some neat things about Eaze. So if you don't mind, Sydney, tell us, what does Eaze actually do?
Yeah, well, Eaze is a cannabis marketplace and company that is really focused on providing safe, legal access to cannabis products via delivery to adults. We're also the largest cannabis employer in the state of California of W-2 employees. But I think when you talk about what we do, it's important to talk about the evolution of Eaze. So we launched in 2014 as a technology platform that connected consumers with local dispensaries for delivery under the Medical Marijuana Act in California. We then moved in 2018 to working with adult use dispensaries as a software platform. And it was really a way for dispensaries to elevate their business from just a retail shop to actually doing robust delivery across California. And the reason why a lot of these dispensaries worked with Eaze is because they got a whole host of information with the software we provided that included things like how many drivers were needed on what types of days, what products was needed during what part of the month, and what was selling on the weekends versus the weekdays. And so they used that information to really get up and running very quickly as a delivery shop. We did that until about 2019, when we then decided to also be a plant touching operation. So we still license our software to dispensaries who want that information, but now we also own some of our dispensaries as well and have management service agreements with others, just depending on the market and what makes most sense.
Wow, that's an amazing transition and evolution of the company. That's a neat way of putting it. In fact, as I was looking at the brief description of Eaze, the one that we placed on the flyer, all I could think of was how you are, in essence, cultivating communities. You are in the communities through your software, through your app, and now you're in communities as an operator, as a service provider, touching the plant. How has that been with respect to communities? Communities accepting of you, communities questioning, because look, we realize that not everyone who gets into the space has the best intentions. Clearly, you guys have done some things, and we're going to get to some of those other things with respect to not only best intentions, but success. So tell me, how were you accepted, not just as the IT platform company, but as now a provider and a part of the fabric of communities?
Yeah, I think that, Eaze, we have core values, which are really important to everyone who works here. We know if we're going to be in this industry, we can't ignore the people who came before us, those who lost everything because of the failed war on drugs, right? So it's really our mission at Eaze to break down barriers to access and really build community in everything we do through our social impact programs, which we'll talk a little bit more later, and our social equity programs. And that has really allowed us to connect with the community in a different way than just an operator coming in and just directly communicating with consumers. We do a lot of volunteer work in the community. We give back a lot to veteran services and hospice care, and there's so many other ways. We have our great compassionate care program where we give out free cannabis products. So we are really trying to figure out what is needed in each community that we're in and give back.
That's an amazing story. All of the social justice conversations, as well as the commerce conversations, and I don't hide the fact that we are in fact a cannabis chamber of commerce. And so the question, not the question, but the statement that I typically make is, you can't have good economic policy without good social justice policy, right? They go hand in hand, and you guys seem to have captured that. So tell me, especially with your background in government affairs and being the policy person for Eaze, kind of help us how you were able to marry that so that it's just good policy, the core values. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I don't think that public policy works without the community piece, right? You have to, especially in cannabis, because it's such an advocate-driven industry, and you have to understand what's happening on the ground. You have to understand what advocates need, because a lot of times policymakers are listening to advocates, right? So if you're just talking to policymakers and you're not talking to advocates, you're not talking to retailers, you're not talking to folks on the ground who are actually doing the work, you have no clue what's actually needed to even have those conversations, right? So, we kind of had to marry the two. But I think that our policy team is really special, and we have a really great group of folks who come from industries where that was always in the fabric of what they were doing, right? And it was never something that someone's, oh, why am I talking to the community? It was like, no, we have to talk to the community, right? And that's kind of how folks are trained. That's how we work. And it's a really, it's a priority within our team. So, it's just something that we have always done. And I think I'm very proud of our team for prioritizing both the community advocacy work and being on the ground and understanding what's happening and helping where we can. Also carry with the policy work and understanding the what's needed from a business perspective, from an economic perspective, and what will work and what won't. So that's kind of how everyone is kind of trained and how we operate.
That's great to hear. I'm a public policy person as well. My background has always been, and it's important. And I think there are several people that have joined us today that were very much a part of the New Jersey conversation as we were developing the legalization laws. And so my hat's off to all of those who are here with us that will be joining us at some point. Thank you all. Guy, I saw you in the chat. Several others that are here. Don't know if Lefty Grimes is on. So hey, Guy. So we want to give a shout out because it's so important to keep our advocates encouraged. Right? People are listening, and so it's not just us, the policy folks. Although it was interesting, and I'd like your perspective on this. at some point, and this was Lefty and Jim here in New Jersey, who one day I was with them in the State House, and Jim turned to me and said, "Hey, you know, Ed, we're glad you're here. We're glad that the suits are here." Because at some point there was this moment where our traditional advocates had run their course, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but they had run their course, and then there was this move to say, okay, let somebody speak the language of Trenton, and you're in DC, you speak the politispeak of DC. So how was that for you, especially when this is a business that is so grassroots, no pun intended, but it is so grassroots. How did you do the move, and how, what's your take on that?
Yeah, well, I come from electoral politics. So I worked on several political campaigns from presidential level, gubernatorial, all the way down to the local level. So a part of my work in the electoral politics was I'm an organizer. That's who I am at my core. I'm an organizer. I'm an organizer who happens to be a lawyer. So because of that, it was actually a little bit easier for me sometimes to, talk to advocates and understand where they're coming from and be able to translate that into the policy speak and talking to folks in the state houses. So for me personally, this was a great fit. This industry in particular, and the time that I entered this industry, was a great fit for me and my skill set. And I think on our policy team, Eaze is particularly looking for folks who have that kind of experience, right? Because it's needed. You have to know how to talk to folks, who are advocates and organizers. You also have to understand how to talk the talk, right? In the state houses. So it's been fairly it's a good transition for me, because it was basically what I was doing on the electoral politics side. I'll give you an example. Just this week, I was talking to the Coalition for Medical Marijuana in New Jersey, and we were talking about the fact that New Jersey doesn't have a compassionate care law right now. And what I mentioned before, Eaze gives out a lot of free cannabis products in California, and we do that through legal means through the Compassionate Care Act in California. And I was talking to advocates about what's needed. Can we do this in New Jersey, so that I can take what the advocates are saying, what they want to see, right, in a compassionate care law, and then talk to elected officials about, hey, can we get this done? And that's really how it works. You start from the grassroots level, you figure out what the needs are, and then you make it into formal policy. And that's what I kind of do every day.
That's really amazing, Sydney. And look, I thank you. And before we get back to some localized conversation, I know people are in the chat, they're asking, what is your contact information? So maybe at the end, please remember to drop your email or however you want people to reach you. So for those that are asking, we'll make sure that Ms. Snow does get her contact information into the chat. So now let's progress. So Eaze is doing amazing things. Your policy work is amazing. And now at the local level, you're doing some really amazing things. Look, I'm a Jersey file. I say all roads lead to Jersey. So there's not one national policy, not one national program that doesn't have some form of Jersey in it. So Eaze has done some really great things. And there is a program. And one of New Jersey's most popular, most successful advocates, Leo Bridgewater, not only a patient, but a veteran, a strong advocate in the medical community, was part of this fantastic program. And I know people are like, okay, Ed, we know it's coming. And it is a grant program, not a loan program. So if you don't mind, tell us about that amazing program that Eaze launched.
Yeah, so we have a whole social equity department, basically. And there are a couple pillars to our social equity work, but one of those pillars is our Momentum program. And our Momentum program is a business accelerator program. So, and it's for folks who underrepresented founders in the cannabis space, who so that means like Black and brown folks, LGBTQ community, women, veterans, patients, really anyone that has been harmed by the war on drugs and is trying to enter the industry but has faced significant barriers to entry. So, when we say accelerator, we're focusing on businesses that are kind of beyond concept. So I think the difference between like an accelerator and an incubator is that an incubator is really focused on businesses that are, establishing themselves, while an accelerator is focused on businesses that are at the end of the incubation period and are kind of posed to grow. And that's really where we wanted to invest in these underrepresented founders at that point. So the Momentum program provides grants of $50,000 each to all 12 of our Momentum cohort. They get 12 weeks of mentorship from industry leaders, and that's everything from, packaging, or, I need to expand my space. How do I do that? I'm looking to, I need some compliance help. I have this business and I had to comply with the law. We have a compliance lawyer that mentors and helps them through these things. So that has been really helpful. And then we also have an investment opportunity that include our virtual pitch day, which we call our demo day. And that is an opportunity for our Momentum cohort to really to pitch their business to deep-pocketed investors for them to get even more money in the program into their businesses. So I think a big part of the Momentum program is not just our $50,000 grant, right, that we are giving folks, but the opportunity and the networking opportunity to get even more money and get exposure to really grow their business. And that's what we've heard from Momentum cohorts about how it's been helpful to them.
That is an amazing program. In fact, and I shared this with you earlier, and there are, again, people that are part of this conversation this afternoon that heard me with my amazing panelists at the New Jersey Cannabis Insider event this week. I was joined by two amazing people, and really it was just something. George Irwin and Shivrali Patel. And so if you get a chance to get back to Cannabis Insider and check out the event that was held this week, but George Irwin was amazing, and he and I were talking about this, that in our community, there are lots of people that deserve a chance at business, want to get into business, and the downside of it, and it's not just canna business, but most new businesses struggle to survive, right? I remember the old statistic used to be most new businesses fail within the first 3 years, something like that. It was either the first 3 or first 5. And so now we're challenged with the cannabis business. So it's not just a matter of erecting a business, it's like, how do you survive? And so what we talked about was building business acumen, building financial or business literacy. And so you guys have started, Eaze has started down this road. And so if you want to maybe share a little bit more about the not just criteria, but what were some of the milestones? And did you actually include things like business acumen, financial acumen, financial literacy? Because that is so important in this community, or communities that are historically disadvantaged. I mean, it's great to want and to hope, but the old saying, hope is not a strategy. So if you could share either your thoughts or what Eaze is thinking with respect to building that business acumen and business literacy.
Yeah, I think it's really important, right? And that's why we really chose businesses and founders that, had kind of reached a level where they were maybe stagnant or just really poised to grow, but needed that extra help, right? So it's not always just about money. You can give someone money and they can still fail because they don't have a good business plan, right? They don't understand compliance. They don't understand, packaging or all these things. So that's a big part of why we included the 12 weeks of mentorship. That's why we didn't just give out the money and said, go, good luck. We actually want these folks to succeed. So the 12 weeks of mentorship, folks are paired in our program with people within our organization that have, there are experts in a certain area, right? So they chose kind of like, what do they need? What do they need the most help with? And then we paired them with that person. And on top of the 12 weeks of just the classes that they had every week, they had like access to these experts in the cannabis industry. And I'll say the folks that work at Eaze are some of the smartest. And they have really, the folks that have been around for a while at Eaze have seen just about everything that could pop up in the industry, right? Their wealth of knowledge is really, I don't know what the monetary value of that is, but it's huge. It's huge to have access to those kind of folks. So they were able to have that kind of access to those folks. And then also, they also were able to, after they went through the program and that they have learned all these things, they were actually, a lot of these folks were actually able to come onto our platform. So let's say you had a brand that you were selling in maybe 5 or 6 shops in California, across California, or maybe just in the Bay Area or just in Southern California. They were actually able to, because of the training that they received from the Momentum program, they knew kind of what to do for them to get on our platform and succeed. So folks that were just maybe in 1 or 2 shops in Southern California now are selling their products statewide. And that is, I think it's directly because of the mentorship that they receive, the understand how to grow their business. What is not working? What is working? Why is it not working? How should I tweak my business plan? Those are the kind of detailed things that we're getting into in the Momentum program. And it's been really successful because we have our whole social equity menu on Eaze platform. So it's just social equity brands that are, mostly small businesses, right? That are on our platform. And to date, we've sold over $7 million worth of social equity products. And that is literally because these brands are really, their businesses are doing well because they understand business, right? Everyone has a passion in this industry for the most part. Most people have a passion for the plant, especially social equity licensees and folks that have businesses. But it's another thing to also have passion for the business part of it, because it's not always the fun part. But I think that folks are learning that, and it's actually really amazing to see the success.
That's so wonderful to hear, Sydney. Look, we applaud you and for all the work that Eaze is doing. And look, I'm going to be a little bit selfish here. So we know Eaze is wonderful, and they've put together this amazing team. Of which you are an immense part of, and we thank you for all that you're doing. But it does beg the question, and we want to hear about Sydney. Okay. I mean, you've got this amazing position in an industry where people of color, women are not always at the forefront. Mm-hmm. And so here it is, you've been on the ground level. Now you're C-level, C-suite, and this is a beautiful thing, and we applaud you. And I personally commit to supporting you in whatever it is that you need. But share with us kind of the personal perspective, the personal, the professional. How is it being a woman of color, young, intelligent, and yet we know it's a very competitive field. Look, whether you're in cannabis or a utility or a pharmaceutical company, it's always going to be competitive. Private sector, government sector, I'm very proud of our young people that jump in and get that experience in government first before they go to the private sector. But there's always something there, right? You're always reaching for a rung on the ladder. So if you don't mind, please share a little bit about your experiences, both personally, professionally, that make you the beautiful person that you are today.
Well, thank you, Ed. I appreciate that. I think that, this industry is predominantly white and male. I'm very lucky to work for a company that prioritizes diversity. They prioritize racial diversity, geographic diversity, gender diversity. So, in my immediate team in my company, I don't necessarily feel it as much, but me looking young, I'm not as young as you think, but because I look young-ish, and as a Black woman, I think that some of the challenges that I might face, that I work through daily, is people really not knowing why I'm in the room in the first place, right? Not understanding that, I have an expertise in this work, and I've been doing it, and I actually have something to contribute. And it's not until I open my mouth where folks are like, oh, she knows what she's talking about. But I have to get the opportunity, because people are always asking me, like, well, who's in charge? Who's the decision maker? Who's the person that I should talk to? And a lot of times they don't think that person is me. I think that it can be difficult, because especially Black women in this space, it's not a lot of us, and especially in the corporate space. There are several Black women that I have relationships with that are in the advocacy space, right? Social equity, and fighting for that. And that's really, really important work. But Black women in the corporate space in cannabis, I can count them on my hands, the people that I know. I'm sure there are more that I don't know, but we pretty much all know each other. And that can be disheartening sometimes. But what I take it as a personal mission to get more Black and brown folks in this space. We are literally, this industry has literally been built on the backs of Black and brown people that were prosecuted basically during the war on drugs, right? And, my own personal story is that, I grew up in an area that was significantly policed. I was impacted by the war on drugs personally in a very significant and traumatic way, unfortunately. And I just know the trauma that comes with even being in this industry and thinking about that. And then I understand the anger that people have when they see these big corporations that don't have any people of color in them, it seems, making all this money, and people personally whose lives were ruined because they were in possession of cannabis or were selling cannabis. And it just doesn't seem fair. So I make it a point to always be open to talking to folks and helping them in any way if they want to get into this industry, because I think it's important. I think it's important for the industry to grow and to get that knowledge and understanding, to have people of color in this industry in a real way, in these corporate positions that are making decisions, talking to lawmakers. I mean, that's who they want to hear from. Especially now. I mean, I would say lawmakers are way more woke than they probably used to be, right? So they're asking us, well, who are the people who are actually been affected? What do they want to hear? And as someone who has actually been affected by the war on drugs, I can speak to that directly. I don't have to be frantically looking for someone, let me find a Black person who, it's not that. And I think that more of that is helpful. So people can hear, especially lawmakers can hear firsthand accounts of why it's so important to have social equity ingrained in laws, in cannabis laws, and why it's important in the appointment process, right? When you're talking about the people who are regulating cannabis, because getting the law, the statute passed, that's the first step. The real hard work is the regulatory process, right? it's important to have diversity. And I know New Jersey knows that more than anyone.
Painfully so.
That was a huge part of the conversation, but it was an important conversation that not everyone had, right? And it's better to delay the process, right? And not have things move as quickly and do it right than to have folks who, one, don't believe that cannabis should even exist, that people should use it legally, don't understand the impact that the war on drugs had on certain communities, and don't understand the business also of cannabis, right? So I think that all of this is really important. And I take it very seriously. It's deeply personal to me. I have a passion for this plant because I feel like this plant, saved my life in many different ways. But it also, before it was legal, it ruined a lot of people that I love, that ruined their lives. So I want to see more people of color in this industry. I'm proud to be working for a company that sees my value and is uplifting others that look like me. And I'm hopeful that the statistics will change. That it's not all white men looking, in rooms anymore. When I walk into rooms, it's a little bit more diversity. So I hope I answered your question.
My dear, you answered that question and then some. Thank you so much for sharing your personal and professional perspective. So as we begin to wrap up, again, I want to thank you, Sydney, for all that you're doing. We want to thank Eaze, and I think it's simply eaze.com, right? EAZE.com. So what's on the horizon for Eaze in New Jersey? Anything in particular that you want to share, or we'll just stay tuned?
I think stay tuned. We are, just like everyone else, waiting to see what happens with this regulatory process. We are, attending the CRC meetings every 2 weeks. We're getting ready to start giving public comments. So we are excited about what's to come. And we trust that the regulators will do the right thing and make it so that business is able to succeed in New Jersey, and that the base and we're thinking about social equity in everything we're doing. So wait to see, we'll see.
Excellent. Well, look, if people don't get it, Eaze is in fact a member of the New Jersey Cannabis Business Association. And so our mutual work, our mutual efforts, this is just a small part of it. Lunch and Learn is a small part of it, but thank you, because your membership, Eaze's membership, Eaze's contributions to the policy discussions are immense, and cannot thank you enough. So as we wrap up today, Ed DeVeaux, president of the New Jersey Cannabis Business Association, want to thank you all for joining today. Please do join us every Friday at noon. We absolutely want to make sure that you get the best that the industry has to offer. The Cannabis Business Association, if you haven't checked us out, it's www.newjerseycannabusiness.com. I want to thank our sponsors of all of our Lunch and Learns, the law firm of Inglesino, Webster, Wyciskala, and Taylor, and to Puffin, cannabis entrepreneurs and investors. We want to thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Next week on the schedule is Cone Resnick. The company Cone Resnick will be with us next Friday at noon. Looking forward to seeing you all then.